Hi, welcome back. I'm here with Dr. Rivian Bass. She's one of the wonderful people within our district that is doing amazing things with our students. And so I wanted to have her talk with us for a little bit today about things happening in our classroom. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Can you tell me and all of us a little bit about your background, both professionally outside of Teller and then things that you're doing here as well?
Sure. This is year 44 as an educator. I've taught for most of that. I've been in rural schools, urban schools, private schools, public schools, charter schools, and I also worked for an educational research company.
Awesome.
So I did staff development through RMC Research.
And how long have you been focused a lot on working with gifted students?
After about maybe 4 years, in the beginning of my teaching, I took a little bit of a break. I had been teaching in a very intense situation, and after a couple months I was really bored, so I called the district office and said, hey, what's going on? And they said, hey, we had someone who had a baby a little bit early. Would you like to come in and be that person for the rest of the year? And so I became the GT person.
You jumped in.
I jumped in, and that sort of started it out. And then when I moved from Minnesota to Denver, my first job was at the Denver School for Gifted and Creative Students, which turned into Logan eventually, the Logan School. So,
awesome. And then since Logan, you've mentioned you've been in a few places. What are some other gifted roles you've had after Logan?
So after Logan, I taught at the Rick Center at DU, and I've taught at Quest in Aurora, which is like our Polaris. Okay. And here I am at Teller.
And then you did your graduate work at DU and Gifted Ed as well.
In curriculum and instruction with a focus on gifted.
Right. So what was, can you tell us a bit, within Denver we've got the focus on, right, under-identified, underserved, and how to better meet all of our gifted and creative and talented students' needs. A little bit about your dissertation?
Sure. My dissertation looked at the experiences of African-American gifted students who were in full-time gifted programming. So they either, one of my students went to Polaris, one went to Quest, one went to Logan, and one went to the Challenge School. And just really talking to them about the challenges of being academic and successful versus part of their culture and feeling a pull from both directions. And for some kids, they chose to be academically successful, and others really struggled with that. A lot of code switching and just a lot of discussion about the support that they receive from their families to push through and be successful academically.
I was thinking of stories within the schools as well, as far as, right, what would be the takeaways as far as things that schools could do to help these students that might be in a minority group of students where they're the one student that isn't, coming from the same background as a lot of the other kids.
Well, and even if they are coming from the same background as the other kids, I think for all of us to realize their struggle, that to be sort of ostracized or pushed out of their culture is huge. And so some kids will choose to do that rather than be academically successful. And so for us to be aware of their struggle and to understand that maybe if they're getting pulled for gifted services, that might really cause them to be teased or ostracized or whatever, and just to realize what they're going through and to have honest conversations with them. I had a little girl this year who was struggling with a lot of those issues. Her first year here was last year, and she kind of hung out with a lot of the other kids that came to see me. This year she decided to step out and be more connected and affiliated with other Black kids, and that's just really threw her into a quandary.
I was trying to think of, what would be your advice on how to help, maybe additional, you mentioned open, honest conversations. Anything else as far as, I was trying to think if there could be mentorship programs, or even beyond the scope of what you could do at this school, because some of the people listening to us are also coming from middle schools, high schools. Can you think of additional supports that could be helpful, even if you had a magic wand and could help even more?
Well, I think, a lot of times in high schools and middle schools, they might have like an African American club, or clubs that or a Hispanic club.
Mm-hmm.
Really kind of tapping into that and helping kids see that there are a lot of people from their particular culture that have made incredible contributions. And, I think it sort of sounds trite, but, and trying to connect them with other role models. I know I taught in Las Vegas for a while, and we had the 100 Black Men organization, which I know is here in Denver as well. And they came and mentored a lot of our boys after school in terms of being successful and being entrepreneurs and that kind of thing. So, really connecting them with, I know that there's an African American Engineer Association and those kinds of organizations where people are professional and have used their talents, just having those mentorships and connections so they feel like they're not alone.
Another piece, as far as thinking of under-identified students that you discussed with me a little bit earlier, was all those students that might not be verbally gifted, right? Those are the ones that are easy for us to spot, but all the students that show real nonverbal gifts. And if you could talk to that a little bit,
Sure.
And what those experiences are.
Well, this fall, do you want to pause? This last fall, as I was looking through test scores, I started looking at who had nonverbal problem-solving strengths. Mm-hmm. And I went through all of the students who have taken a cognitive assessment who are on my roster. So they're either identified or they're magnet eligible or they have indicators. Mm-hmm. And I found that 83% of those students at Teller have a nonverbal problem-solving strength. Mm-hmm. They might have other strengths as well, but that was startling to me. And when we look oftentimes at school, the question I had to ask myself is, what are we doing for those kids? Mm-hmm. So in the last few years, I feel really strongly about making sure that they get those needs satisfied somewhere in the building, and I feel like it's with me in terms of, doing STEM activities, mostly building and, just tinkering around.
Awesome.
So,
and we'll look at a few of those examples in a little bit as well. I know that you're looking at retiring soon, which is going to be our loss, and so thank you very much for meeting with us and for recording this so that other
Sure.
people can learn as well. Before we start looking around your room at different things that you've been doing, kind of if you had your parting words of wisdom, what it's like. And obviously things within the district change all the time, and depending on what type of school they're in and what types of supports they have, what are the things that you think are best practice in general for gifted kids? Kind of what would give people the most bang for the buck? And if you said, hey, there's all these different methods I could try, but if I could only really focus on and master 2 or 3 things, what would you recommend?
Ooh, that's a tough one to condense it.
Yes.
Well, a lot of times we say, we feel like we don't have any funds. So the first thing I want to say is that the Denver Public Schools Foundation offers grant money fall and January. Mm-hmm. So if you have a project that you want funded, go for it. Westera Credit Union also has grant money in the fall. So some of the things that, like all the STEM materials that I have, mm-hmm. have come from those grants. Nobody else in our building uses them, so I take advantage of that. And the DPS Foundation one is $2,000, up to $2,000.
Significant.
It is significant. So if you're thinking about doing any kinds of STEM activities, or you need robotics or materials or electronics or whatever, those are places that you can fund your projects through. So that would be a piece. It's not best practice, but it can help you get somewhere.
I'm thinking most people hear the word grant or grant writing and they go,
oh no, I'm not a grant writer. So it's super easy. there's just a couple questions. What do you need it for? What do you want? And how is it going to impact your kids?
Awesome.
It's not, and then at the end of the year, they do ask you to write a little final report. It's not heavily focused on data, and then they want you to send them a thank you note.
Awesome. You think about how much money goes unused each year when we're all clamoring for money, but people, again, they think, oh, I can't write anything, so that's great.
Yeah, it's super easy. The Westera one, I just cut and paste and basically use the same kind of
template.
So they're very easy to access.
Awesome.
So, and I would, I think a big thing for me in this job is when I discovered that I was what the district categorizes as BCC, which is beyond the Common Core. I look at the people on my staff, they're incredible teachers. So if they're teaching Common Core, why would I be teaching Common Core? So that kind of gave me the freedom to go off and really look at the needs of kids at Teller, year to year, and sometimes, term to term, and what do they need? What can I offer them that's not Common Core, that's different? And sure, there are things that I do, like the literacy group that we were talking about. We're doing fairly traditional literacy exercises, but I'm also having them do something that's way beyond their grade level.
So thinking about someone, if they're in a building or a situation where, right, they have to list out the Common Core standards that they're using on the blackboard, and they have to use that as a base. Can you think of good things to do, or if they have maybe an administrator that says, hey, you're going to use this lesson plan at this time of day, all 5th graders or all 9th graders are doing this math. Little things that they can do, even in those systems where they're pretty constrained.
So this is a great example. This is this huge game board that you see, this big yellow game board. Originally, that started out as a spelling simulation game, and it's based on D&D. It's super old, and I just turned it into a math game. So I have kids coming in from different grade levels, and I have them doing different math with me, and they're on teams. They move along the game board. They get powers. They have fate cards they have to pick, and so they're excited about it. So it's just kind of an overlay that gets them engaged and excited about it. But they're doing math.
Right. Thinking about systems, so some of the people that are listening are also administrators or in those types of roles or support roles rather than classroom teachers. Thoughts on how to spread the word or, start creating change? You've been a good part of some great change happening. So, kind of speaking to that.
I would say, and I know a lot of people don't have a lot of time, but my principal, for instance, said to me at one point, it wasn't until she spent a lot of time with our kids during the GT Summer Academy that she realized how different their needs were. And that really hit me as well. Just, we often don't have time to go into each other's classrooms, or if people do come in, they've got their LEAP evaluation going on their computer and all that, and it's like, invite people to come into your classroom and put their computer away and just mingle and just talk to the kids and just see what the kids are up to. So, just really understanding the needs that our kids have. You're not going to do that just on paper. You have to know them. You have to see it in action. So I would encourage people to take the time.
Before we start filming around your room at different things you've done, any last minute or last words of advice or things that you would want to make sure to share?
I would say that the GT people in our district are a wealth of knowledge and experience and information, as well as you guys in the GT department. So I would encourage people to reach out to other people. Shoot out an email that says, hey, I'm trying to do this. Does anybody have any resources? There's so much out there for gifted kids or for just kids that you can use. That kids are, I'm using something right now with my math kids. I'm doing cryptorhythms, which are math problems that have letters instead of numbers, and they have to figure out what the numbers are. Those things have been around forever. I pulled them together, put them in a packet, easy to hard, did a couple lessons. They're having so much fun. They're like, can we take these out of here? Can we take these to class and work on them?
Yes. Sure.
So, there's a lot out there. You just have to dig around and even look at the things that are out there. Like I love the units from the Lawrence Hall of Science. They're marvelous, and there's fingerprinting, and there's chromatography, and then there's Mystery Festival. There's a lot of things. If you don't feel like you're a curriculum writer, there's incredible stuff out there,
right?
That you can adapt, you can use. There's some incredible people we found even on Teachers Pay Teachers. Last summer for GT Academy, we had one group that were making tiny houses. And they each had a client. So they had an adult in the building, from our principal to the custodian and everybody in between. And they were all clients for a particular student who was designing a tiny house for them.
Aww.
And then they had to literally build it, a model of it. And so there's wonderful stuff out there that hits the standards, but is engaging, is hands-on. And to me, the biggest thing is engagement. We need to keep our kids engaged, work towards their strengths, but really make sure that they're here, that they're hands-on, minds-on.
I was thinking, you mentioned your GT Academy, and some folks wouldn't know what that is, so maybe you could tell a little bit about that your inaugural summer was last summer. And
so last summer we hosted 52 or 53 students from first grade, rising kinders to rising, they were rising kinders to rising fifth graders. And we had 4 classrooms, grade level wise. Our older one, we had 4, 5, and 6. And we had 4 teachers and 5 interns who were staff members who were looking to get their endorsement through the district. And so everybody had a unit. So we had tiny houses, we had a geography unit, we had a math/art, sort of the correlation between math and art. That was one group. And what was the other group? Oh, 2 groups did that, math and art. And then there's a social emotional component that each group did during part of the morning. And then at the end of our chunk of time, we had micro society or mini society. People call it different things. So we were all in the library, and we were a city. We had a mayor, we had a city council, we had advertising agents, we posted jobs. There were jobs inside the classrooms. Kids got paid. Starbucks. And then on one day a week, the city opened, and they would bring their wares. So some people sold items, but we also had entertainment. So we had a bowling alley, which was unbelievable. We had putt miniature golf, and we had an arcade. And we had another program in the building that was the transition group from ECE to kinder. So a couple times we gave them our fake money, and they came up and shopped. So they were kind of more money in our little economy. And then we had discussions about economics, and kids would say, well, why didn't anybody buy any of my wares? And so then we'd talk about supply and demand. And so it was a blast. So we can't do it this coming summer because our building is under some sort of a no people can be in it mandate. There's some sort of maintenance that they're doing, so no one can be in our building, but we hope to get up and running again the following summer.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. All right, let's look around your room.
So this is the Isle of Secrecy, and students are on different teams, and they move along the game board by completing work. And right now, the work that they're completing is mathematics. So different groups are doing different things in math. And this is based on Dragons and Dungeons, so they have different powers, and they can move up in their powers by doing different things. They're trying to get as much gold as they can, and they're trying to get to the castle over on the right. I hope it's right for you. And this is actually published by a company called Interact. They are now owned by the Social Studies company, but you can find them online, and they publish, they sell incredible simulation games, all subject areas, and in all grade levels.
And so could they Google something even like the Isle of Secrecy, or what would they?
I think if you just Google Interact simulation, you'll get to their website.
Awesome. What are the components that you think most excite kids about this? How long do they go through a game typically to get a winner up at the castle?
You know, it depends on the age level and what you're doing. We just are coming off of a break from it, so we just kicked back in today and started back up, and they were all super excited because they race in to see if their game marker has moved, and I'm like, you guys, we're on a little break, so no, it hasn't moved. So when I told them we were going to get back to it, they were all super excited. That sort of mild competition is something that some kids really love.
Are they on teams or?
They are on teams. So I have training on the 2 or 3 kids on a team, but I've had 4 kids on a team, and it works perfectly fine.
Awesome.
Oh, me? Sorry. So one of the STEM things that I do with the kids is called Little Bits. They are electronic components, as you can see on the poster, and they snap together they're magnetic, and they snap together. And if they don't go together, then the kids figure out that they have to twist them or turn them. And so we look at what the bits do, and then they have some free time to just invent and to create. So sometimes I ask them to create something like a ride for a playground, or sometimes I'll just let them create on their own. So here's one of the inventions. So this is a vehicle that a group of kids have made, and it's run off of a remote control because in their little bunch of components they have a switch that's called a remote switch that reads a signal off of a remote control, and they love that. So we've had all kinds of different things. We've had flashlights, we've had a lot of vehicles. You can take the wheels and attach a marker and tip it over, and it'll scoot around and draw things like a spirograph. So we've got a lot of those kinds of crazy little inventions going around. With the first graders, to kind of prep them for this, I do an electricity unit. So, and we even go into molecular structure, so they actually know that electricity is the electrons jumping from atom to atom, and we make models of atoms, and then we use snap circuits. Mm-hmm. And we start out with batteries and bulbs and wires, and then we move over to snap circuits, and so that's sort of their culmination piece in first grade. And then second, third has been working with snap circuits, or with Little Bits. And again, Little Bits are not cheap, but this is where I use the DPS Foundation funds to purchase Little Bits.
Awesome.
One of the activities that we did with 4th and 5th grade literacy is we read a science fiction book called The Forgotten Door. It's out of print, but it's definitely worth having and using. And after we discussed it and dissected it, then the kids were given, I think, 10 or 12 different projects that they could do using the book. So diorama, movie trailer, newspaper article. One student did a survey on what does family mean to you, and then kind of brought that all back to the book, and pieces of the book that had to do with family. And then we had a end of the day session where families could come and see their students' work, where classmates could come as well. We set up in the library, and the kids got to show what they had worked on. And this is all part of a unit from Vanderbilt University. And they were supposed to read A Wrinkle in Time for that, but the kids have all read it, or many of them have read it. So I switched to The Forgotten Door because I love the story. It's super high level, and it leaves you sort of with a cliffhanger, and the kids have talked about it for weeks afterwards. Well, what about this, or what about that? We're still trying to decide whether the alien who ends up at on Earth is really part of a group of people who left Earth for this other planet, or not. And so we've had all these great arguments about it. Now we're looking at Ray Bradbury, and we've read several short stories of his that the kids have loved. They love his writing style, so we've really focused both on content but also on style. And so we'll discuss the stories, but then we look at how he has crafted his work. And the kids are loving the idea of it, writing and using pieces of his style. So they're using short sentences and really long sentences, or they'll write a whole paragraph that's one sentence. Or they'll use repetition, which is another strategy that he uses. We've also discovered in the story All Summer in a Day that the main character, Margot, her name means pearl. This character was fragile and pale. And the kids were like beside themselves with this sort of inside information. Only one other character has a name, and he is the bully of the story, and his name is William. And the kids looked him up and discovered that his name means conqueror. And so we talked about why don't the other characters have names? And so they were just beside themselves with this knowledge of like, well, they're a group and they follow the bully, and why should they have names? Because they're like sheep, et cetera, et cetera. So this has been really, really fun. So we'll read one more short story by him, and then we'll actually watch Marshall. So one of the things in my classroom is a tool bench, which is kind of separated from the tools right now. And so the kids can, when it's appropriate and we're creating and making projects, the kids know to use the tools. They know how to use them. We have a big snippers up there, and they know that if they use that, they have to have eye protection on, and they do. And for the most part, when they first get here and learn that they can touch those things and actually use them, they're super excited, just like they are with using hot glue guns. But if we want them to make good decisions and use the proper tools, then they have to have access to those materials.
I'm sure lots of kids are extremely excited to be able to use this type of stuff in school, right? Suddenly school is fun.
They are. And they know that, I mean, there's limits. Like I have a saw, but the saw is, I use the saw, and the box cutter, I use the box cutter. But I have like cardboard saws, and I have hand drills. I used to have my regular drill here, and a couple years ago, I heard somebody going into my file cabinet, and I turned around, and the student was getting out the drill bits and bringing them to me and saying, do you think you could drill this for me, or do you think the hand drill will work better? But I want kids, and we should all want kids to be independent learners and take responsibility. And if we don't give them those opportunities, then they're missing out. This is a mask one of my students made after we read The Green Man, which is a story, a classic story, and it's part of junior grade books. Probably not the most current version, but one of the older versions of junior grade books. So we read the story of Claude, who was not a believer in the Green Man and gets lost in the forest and eventually becomes the Green Man. And then after, the kids had a series of different projects that they could do, and this was one of them.
What for those who have not heard of Junior Great Books before, can you give a quick synopsis of that?
Junior Great Books are stories that are selected by the Junior Great Books people for the depth of discussion that can come from them. They're graded. They come in different grade levels. And I know they're scattered around the district. So if you don't have access to them, I would send out an all-call through email through the GT department and figure out who has what that you can either go and look or borrow. I know a couple years ago there was somebody who put out a note that said that they had an older version of Junior Great Books that they were looking to donate to another school.
I know as someone that's been in charter schools and private schools that I found some even over the years at thrift stores and used through Amazon and things like that. Yeah, it's a great resource.
Yeah.
Thank you for Dr. Rivian Bass joining us today and sharing what she does in her classroom.
Creativity is putting your imagination to work, and it's produced the most extraordinary results in human